Welcome into On Deck. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you guys for being active in the chat early. I do appreciate it. Got some things to talk about today. Not a huge headline day, but we are going to talk about, of course, spring training has begun. We're going to give you the latest news out of there. We're going to talk a little bit more of some of the headlines around baseball tonight, just because I want to show you kind of how that compares, to the Braves itself. But first, let's of course start in spring training. So we got a Mike Soroka update, which is always a good thing to hear. It's the first time we've really directly heard about that Achilles tendon injury in a while. Soroka basically had an interview today alongside Snitker, and he said that he'd been encouraged by Kevin Durant's successful return from practically the same injury earlier this year. And he was quoted as saying it might have taken Durant that extra couple of months, but it's all worth it. I need to be strong enough to sprint off the mound if we need to, and it's been a process. So what that tells me, and I didn't really get a chance to watch this interview, but what that tells me is Soroka, obviously he's been throwing, we all know that. I think he's already at a point where he could pitch, but I really think the Braves are going to wait it out. They're going to make sure he's 100%. They're going to test everything and make sure he's indestructible, because we all know how much of a hit the Braves took last year. You could argue that had the Braves had Soroka in the NLCS last year, they would have gone to a World Series, and who knows what happens at that point. So, obviously, he was a big hit. We don't want to lose him again. And really, just for the continued success, his future career, you don't want to risk another Achilles injury. So, I think this is a process that has no reason to be rushed. It's not like you're in a rush in a 60-game season again. You have a 162-game season. You got plenty of time to adjust. And I don't think the Braves are really in a bad spot here. So I don't see a reason to rush it. But I will tell you this, as a fan of Mike Soroka, as a guy that's met him, this was nice to see today. Of course, Braves came out with spring training photos today, and this is just one of them. And I really thought it was something that you guys would like to see. And I think it's a good sign going forward that Mike Soroka will be back and will make his way back to the starting rotation sooner rather than later. But alongside that, there were, of course, there was some other news out today. A lot of you probably saw the fact that Melancon, his deal came out, and it was 1 year, $2 million, or every year he's getting $2 million. Whatever the news was, it was cheaper than expected. So Snitker spoke on the bullpen today, and he echoed a lot of what I've been telling you over these past couple of episodes. I've told you that the Braves, even if they don't go get anyone, I saw some mentions for Shane Green in the chat, and I appreciate that. As much as I'd like us to go get Shane Green, he's not necessarily a necessity. As much as I like him, as much as I think the Braves should do it, aside from that, he's not needed per se to win ball games. In the postseason, I'd want Shane Green. That's kind of the way I feel about it. But Snitker came out today basically in response to a question about who's going to have the closing role, right? You don't have Mark Melancon. You don't have Shane Green. You got Will Smith, but he struggled last year. So Snit said about the bullpen that we have a lot of good options there. We have a bunch of guys that have done that before, and he thinks that is something about bullpens in today's game. You're not going to have a lot of consistency, which is true. I mean, I just mentioned Will Smith. Will Smith was an all-star less than 2 years ago at the closing role, and then last year his slider, of course, was very unpredictable, and he lost some home run balls. But Snitker spoke really highly of Will Smith, and I thought that was a good thing to hear. But just based on his work ethic and things like that, he basically said that what I just said. He was an all-star less than 2 years ago. Give him a shot here. But there are a lot of the candidates for that closing role: Will Smith, Chris Martin, AJ Minter. I would throw Jacob Webb in there because Jacob Webb kind of impressed me last year. But there's a lot of guys in the bullpen that I think are going to step up and take a big role this year, and Will Smith is one of them. But there might be a little bit more competition at the backup catcher role than I originally expected, or that I think a lot of Braves country probably originally expected. I expected William Contreras to just be thrown in there and say, take it and run with it. That has been proven false as of today. Snitker came out and said that Contreras and Alex Jackson have both come a long way, and it's been a while since we've had depth or catching options in the minor league system. So what I take from that primarily is the fact that William Contreras is still certainly the favorite in terms of long term, right? I don't think Alex Jackson is what we're looking at to be the next catcher of the future. I think he might be a stand-in. I think he might be a trade piece after this year. But he might start the year in that backup catcher role. The reason I say that is because of this exact conversation. I think also, there's no harm necessarily in, keeping both of those guys in the conversation and giving William Contreras a little bit more time in Gwinnett to develop. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. He certainly had a strange time with that last year and a very, strange method of minor leagues. It was more just like a training camp, and he didn't really get that last year of minor leagues, so maybe they want to give him some extra time. Maybe, just maybe. I think there's nothing wrong with having competition. We talked a lot about competition, and there's going to be a lot of competition for the Braves this year, and that is a good thing. Okay, you got guys in the bullpen. A.J. Minter came out of nowhere last year. Will Smith, all-star 2 years ago. Chris Martin, potentially Shane Green, hopefully. But you got a lot of guys, young guys too. Kyle Wright, Bryce Wilson, guys that were electric in the postseason last year, but have struggled in the regular season, in long term. It's going to be interesting to see how they're integrated into the bullpen. But then you got the bench. You got battling on the bench. Of course, we just went and got Jason Kipnis, Travis Demeritte, Johan Camargo. There's a lot of competition at that bench spot, rightfully so. Anybody in the minor leagues right now is competing for a bench spot, right? In theory, there's still an outfield spot technically you could compete for in Christian Pache. As much as he is the prospect of the future, that's still a competition. If he has a terrible spring training, they're not going to put him there on opening day. Ender Inciarte, I still think there's a very good possibility that the Braves decide to start the season with Ender Inciarte in center field, specifically to get Christian Pache another year of control under the Braves umbrella. So, with that said, who's to say Drew Waters can't prove himself? Who's to say Trey Harris can't go out and prove himself and take that outfield spot? There is a lot of competition. Now, do I think those will happen? Honestly, no. I think Christian Pache is the better of the three, and he'll show himself in spring training, and that'll be what will be. The most likely is that he goes a month without playing and gets that extra year of control, but I think there's no reason to expect anything less. But my point is there is competition. The only place I don't necessarily see competition is the starting rotation, but even then, if Mike Soroka's not ready on opening day, that's competition. Bryce Wilson, Kyle Wright, step up. Who's it going to be for this time being? There's a lot of competition like there was last year, like there was the year before. There's a lot of competition because the Braves minor leagues are so good. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. Because the Braves minor league system is so good, they don't have to go out and get people. They don't have to go find quote-unquote pieces, right? That's what the Mets do. That's what the Phillies do. There's nothing wrong with that. But the way the Braves are set up, they've set themselves up for success long term. We're getting the fruits of that labor now, and it's a very good thing to see. So that's about what I got in terms of the spring training wrap-up for today. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of content out there, but obviously a good thing to see that Mike Soroka is back in action to some degree, and it's good to see that they're taking the process slow. As much as I'd like him to be ready on opening day, I'm okay with waiting a couple of weeks, even a month. I'm okay with that if that means he comes back and is 100%. Also, it's good to see that we're figuring out the bullpen, we're figuring out the bench, because that was obviously the concern. It's good to see Snitker step up and give those explanations early on in spring training. And, of course, I thought it was honestly a pretty good thing to hear that he's considering Alex Jackson, because Alex Jackson, he's no pushover himself. He was pretty good. I still think William Contreras is going to be the way the Braves go long term, maybe even into Shea Langoliers. But Alex Jackson, there's nothing wrong with giving him the major league shot. He came up last year when the Braves needed him. He performed, okay. He wasn't spectacular by any means, but he performed okay. It's like you'd expect. And he did his job. So I think there's nothing wrong with having competition. I think the Braves really encourage competition. I think they don't like to just say, all right, kid, the spot's yours. I really enjoy the fact that they encourage competition. They want to see the best out of you. And because of that, it makes everybody on their A game. So that's spring training for today. But I wanted to focus on this because this sort of randomly came out of nowhere. And I'm going to kind of try to explain this as best I can and what I think about it. But, of course, Fernando Tatis Jr., right? Now, I really like Fernando Tatis Jr. I like him a lot. I think he's an electric player. I think he's a star player. I think he'll be the face of San Diego for a very long time, especially after this recent contract. $330 million, as much as I'm against that kind of money, if you want to pick, here's the thing. right? If you want to give it to a player that's going to be the face of your franchise, I'm okay with big money. 14 years, I'm a little skeptical on, because 14 years is a long ways away. We are in 2021. That will be what, 2035, the time that contract ends. I just think that's a lot riding on one guy. I think that's a lot of your payroll in one guy for a long-term commitment. Obviously, the Padres don't mind spending money, and that's perfectly fine, but that's a lot of money to be spent. So what I did, what I wanted to do, and what I did was I put a graphic together, and I compared the contracts of Fernando Tatis Jr., who, again, I'm not going to question how much money this guy's making. Okay, that's not what I'm doing here. This is not a criticism of how much money he's making. This is more of a compliment to the Braves, okay? Because Ronald Acuna Jr., look at this graphic. Fernando Tatis Jr. is making $330 million over 14 years. In 2019, he had a .317 batting average, 22 homers, and about 330 at-bats. Nothing wrong to me with that contract necessarily. But you compare that to Ronald Acuna, right? Obviously, there's a better batting average in 2019 for Fernando Tatis. The reason I chose 2019 is specifically because it's the last full season. But Ronald had 41 homers and 626 at-bats. So, obviously, he's got significantly more homers, but he's also got significantly more at-bats. And, to me, this says a lot about talent level. To me, it says they're right there around the same level. I don't think there was any questioning that to begin with. But you got Ronald for 8 years and $100 million. Here's my point. You're committing $330 million to Fernando Tatis Jr., and Ronald, you're committing $100 million. Fernando Tatis Jr. is not 3 times the player Ronald Acuna is. But what that contract did for the Braves was a very good thing. Ozzie Albies, same way. And you can say that they should have got paid more. They probably could have got paid more. But I think those guys want to win. I think the Braves organization is first class. Very few people have said otherwise. And I think they want to be there. I think they want to win there. And I think that's a very good thing. To me, honestly, with the San Diego deal, personally, I am more okay with this than I was Bryce Harper. Because Bryce Harper is a little bit older. Fernando Tatis has only been in the league 2 years, and one of those years, he only played half the season in 2019, and 2020 was, like a third of a season. So, there's not a lot of sample size to choose from to throw that kind of money at. Obviously, they believe in him, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But, I think Freddie's going to get big money at some point from the Braves. So I'm okay with big money if it's proven. I'm really okay with this. They've chosen the face of their franchise. He's obviously a star. I just question, I question it a little bit just because it's so long term. Granted, Bryce Harper's making more annually, but he's basically getting the same total. So my thing is, with Ronald Acuna, a lot of people say that Ronald Acuna kind of got quote-unquote played by the Braves. And as much as I can get your point, I don't agree. I think this is look, Ronald Acuna's agent is working just as hard as Fernando Tatis' agent. Okay, I don't think the Braves played him. I think the Braves promised him, frankly, good results on the field. Good players to play with, i.e. Ozzie Albies, Max Fried, Mike Soroka, Dansby Swanson. Those guys usually cost a lot of money, right? Freddie Freeman's going to cost some money. Austin Riley, potentially in the future, is going to cost money. Christian Pache is going to cost money. Drew Waters going to cost money. Marcell Ozuna just cost us a lot of money. So I really think that the Braves promised him a good product. And players like Ronald Acuna, I don't think are money hungry a lot of the time, much like a lot of the Braves are, in my opinion. Obviously, they want their what's due to them, but the Braves have a history of this. This is not abnormal. Look at Chipper Jones. Look what the money he took. Hall of Fame player. Look at the money he took to have good players to play around. But I really think that he's a young player. It's security. Same goes for Ozzie Albies. You're getting Ozzie Albies and Ronald Acuna for significantly less than what the Padres are paying Fernando Tatis Jr. So as much as people like to criticize Alex Anthopoulos, this is his job, okay? He's got a budget. He's got to work around it, and a lot of people get upset, but I really think that is one of the smartest moves in the past 10 years. So as much as people want to say, those players got messed up with, those guys I mean, what if we were paying him that amount of money? Who would we be able to go get, right? So I really think, baseball prices are going up every year, and for the Braves to make a long-term commitment like that for Acuna, Albies, it worked out for them. It was a win-win on both sides. Personally, I think that, and if you don't, that's okay. But I just wanted to take a quick comparison of these two contracts and just tell you kind of what I think about it, because I know it's all over the news right now. It really, last night it popped up on my phone. I was like, wow, okay. That's a lot of money to throw at somebody who's only played 2 years, and those 2 years he only played half the season, really. It's just a small sample size to choose from. And again, if the Braves had paid Acuna that amount of money, I'd have been like, wow, it's kind of abnormal, but okay. So I'm not so much questioning what the Padres are doing. Now, the Phillies, that's a different story. But, this happens every year with somebody like a Machado or somebody like a Bryce Harper or somebody like, DeGrom. Whoever it's going to be, there's always the biggest star in the market. Tatis was obviously given the extension. I think he certainly earned it. He was in the MVP conversations a lot of last year. So I think they wanted to make that commitment, make it known that this is our franchise player, this is who we're banking on, and they certainly did that in a very big way. So credit to San Diego where it's due. They made a lot of big moves this offseason, including this, and you could argue they're making a lot of the moves that people say that the Braves won't make, like extending Freddie Freeman. But, Freddie Freeman is obviously not going anywhere. I think the Braves know that. I think Freddie knows that. I think we should know that. So, to me, I think, the Braves really have impressed me with their ability to do this over a longer period of time. And I don't think there's anything wrong with, to me, you should be able to get paid whatever somebody will pay you. It's not Bryce Harper's fault that he gets paid the money he does. But, like I've said the other night, when was the last time the Phillies brought home a National League East Division title, right? The Braves are able to do that because they're not paying for, a fourth of the payroll to one guy. So I think there's something to be said about that. I think a lot of credit is due to Alex Anthopoulos. As much as people want to get on him, I think he's very good at his job, and I think that gets overlooked extensively. So that's pretty much all I got for tonight. I'm going to go through y'all's comments in a few minutes. Obviously, super chats are appreciated, but I am going to go through them in just a few minutes. But again, spring training outlook, Soroka's getting better, a lot of competition to be had, and a lot to look forward to this season. So, SBFM Baseball Channel says we have to go get Shane Green now. Look, I like Shane Green as much as the next guy, but I think that bullpen's going to have something to be said. So he also says that the Braves got some bench pieces. If you want to hear about that, go check out the Jason Kipnis video I just dropped yesterday. Did they release the MLB Top 10? Did they do that? Because I haven't seen it. Oh, yep, apparently they did. Yeah, I knew Freddie would be up there. I knew Acuna would be up there. Mookie had to be up there somewhere. If somebody can drop that top 10, I'd appreciate it. If you can. If not, I'll look it up in a minute. But, yeah, I kind of did the math last night and realized, Acuna hasn't been selected. Freddie hasn't been selected. It's interesting to see that Acuna is way above Ozuna after last year. There were some players that I was like, wow, really? We're going to put him that high? But, it is what it is. A lot of that's marketing anyway. But, if you can pull up, I'll pull it up in a second. But, the top 10, it's fan service. But it's always fun to look at, and I think it's a very interesting thing to look at. But here, I'll read you the top 10. I knew Cody Bellinger was going to be on there. He's number 10. They just got him in there. Yelich, I knew had to be on there. He's number 9. Anthony Rendon, that makes sense, number 8. Ronald Acuna Jr., number 7. Fernando Tatis Jr., $330 million man himself, number 6. Juan Soto, number 5. Somebody told me they didn't think he was going to make top 100. I disagreed. Number 4, Freddie Freeman. Number 3, Jacob deGrom. You knew he had to be up there. Mookie Betts said if number 1's not Mike Trout, I don't know who's it going to be. They haven't released number 1, but number 2 is Mookie. So, number 1, Mike Trout. So, that's about what I would have said. I mean, Acuna and Freeman are up there, and I really think that, the Braves continue to get better. And a lot of people like to criticize the quote-unquote weaker points of the team, and I think that's very unfair. I think that honestly, I think that Dansby Swanson doesn't get the credit he deserves. A lot of people want to criticize his bat, but the dude's an elite defender, and his bat improves every year, and he's figuring himself out. So I really think that I think the Braves do just fine with what they have. Dansby Swanson was, of course, first overall pick. He went through some struggles, same struggles we see in a lot of young players. There's nothing wrong with that, but he's really adapted. I think he's one of the leaders in the clubhouse. I thought the Braves would offer Ronnie a $200 million contract to see if he'd bite, but when they got him for $100, I thought his agent was on Braves payroll. Yeah, I was kind of surprised to see that too, but I didn't believe it at first. I really was kind of happy about that one, and I really think that Ronald Acuna made it a point to take that amount of cut. Because look, he's still making $100 million a year, man, or $100 million in his contract, and he's making millions every year. So, as much as people want to get on the Braves about not paying him, he's making a lot of money, and a lot of people forget that. And I think that people need to realize that. Social media got all over the Braves for not paying Ozzy Albies, right? Ozzy Albies came from Curacao. He came from, a lower income country, and, that's security for his family. Immediate security, long term, and it's millions of dollars. So as much as people want to get on, you don't know these guys' backgrounds, you don't know anything about them. So obviously they wouldn't take it if they thought they were. Obviously, I think they're worth more, but if they thought they were worth more, could get more, would want to go somewhere else, willing to do it. But a lot of people just want to stay where they're at, and they're okay with that. If it's a good environment, and the Braves provide a very good environment. Josh Donaldson didn't want to leave. He was like, "Look, I'll take a pay cut if you get it within the ballpark of what I want to make." And of course, the Braves couldn't do it, but that is what it is. That's strictly money. But it wasn't the environment that made him leave. So I think if you got a competitive team, a fun team to be around, there's nothing wrong with staying at that team and taking a quote-unquote pay cut. I think those guys make plenty of money. I think they're doing just fine. So that's pretty much all I got tonight. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Obviously not a very big night to talk about a lot of things, but I wanted to hit you guys with the Soroka news. Wanted to talk to you about some of those first interviews we're getting out of spring training, with Snitker and some other things. So I am going to get out of here in just a minute. I do appreciate you guys tuning in. And, of course, I'll see you next time. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time on deck.